Have you ever felt like everything around you was falling apart? Like the ground vanished beneath your feet and no one even noticed? Like the whole world kept turning, except for you? Maybe you spent the whole night wide awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out where you went wrong. You tried to be honest, you prayed, you worked hard, you kept your head up, you stayed strong. But nothing seemed to work. And now all you can think is, I'm done, I'm exhausted. And in that exhaustion, the thought of giving up starts growing inside of you like it's the only option left. But listen to me, it's not. Because even when you can't see a way out, there is still hope. Even when you feel like God is silent, He is still moving. I know it's hard to believe, but even Jesus went through moments like this. In the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus said, "Father, if it's possible, take this cup from me." The Son of God Himself, about to give His life, cried out for help. If Jesus felt sorrow, why would you think your pain is wrong? Your weakness does not disqualify you. It makes you human. And it's in that broken, tired, heart-shattered place that God performs His greatest miracles. We often ask Him to take us out of the storm. But sometimes the miracle is not in being rescued from the storm. It's in learning how to walk through it without sinking. Remember Peter, when Jesus called him to walk on water? As long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, he stood. But the moment he looked at the wind, he began to sink. Maybe that's where you are right now. You started full of faith and confidence, but then came unemployment, a bad diagnosis, betrayal, and your eyes drifted from Jesus. That's when faith starts to waver. But even then, Jesus reached out and grabbed Peter's hand. He didn't let him drown, and He won't let you drown either. You might feel stuck right now, like nothing is moving. No doors opening, no answers coming. God's silence feels heavier than any words could. But hear this, His silence is not absence, it's preparation. Did you know it took 25 years from God's promise to Abraham to the birth of Isaac? 25 years of waiting for what was already promised, and yet Abraham still believed. Maybe you've been waiting for 5 months or 5 years, and you're ready to give up. But God's time is not our time. While you wait, He's working in places you cannot see. He's shaping you, strengthening you, teaching you how to trust, even when you don't understand. What if your pain today is building your strength for tomorrow? What if your tears are watering a seed of transformation? What hurts you now could one day become your testimony, the very story that lifts someone up who is where you once were. Because life won't always be easy. There will be dark nights, there will be lonely days, but there will also be renewal. God is a master of new beginnings, and maybe today you say, I can't do this anymore. So let me ask you, how many times have you said that before, and yet you're still here? How many times did you think you couldn't go on, but you did anyway? That's because there's a power inside you that defies logic, a strength that comes from a God who never quits, who knows your name, who sees your pain when no one else does, who understands even the prayers you can't speak out loud, who turns despair into hope. You may feel invisible, like no one notices your struggle, but God sees you. He saw you crying quietly in the bathroom. He saw you smiling through the pain. He saw you staying silent so you wouldn't worry anyone. And He wants you to remember this. You are still here, still standing, even with wounds, still fighting, and that alone is already a miracle. The fact that you're still standing is already a victory. So do not give up now. What looks like the end might actually be the beginning of the most beautiful chapter in your story. And when you feel the weakest, that is when God's power is made perfect in you. He will carry you in His arms. He will give you strength, and one day when you look back, you will understand that it was worth it to keep going. Maybe today you do not even have the strength to pray. So just whisper, God, hold me, and He will hold you tightly. He will walk with you all the way to the place where your pain becomes purpose, to the day when you will look at the valley and say, I went through it, and I overcame. You have not been forgotten. You have not been abandoned. The promises still stand. There is still a path, There is still a God in control, and He is not finished with your life. Have you ever thought that maybe what feels like the end is actually the beginning of something far greater than what you imagined? Sometimes life knocks us down so hard that everything in us screams for a final period. But God does not write with periods. He writes with commas. What you see as the closing of a door, He sees as the start of a transformation. What you call failure, He calls process. The Bible is full of people who thought they had been discarded when in truth they were being prepared. Moses, for example, spent 40 years in the desert before returning to Egypt to fulfill his purpose. For 40 years, he felt unworthy, carrying a broken past, fearing he was not enough. But it was that very man, hidden from the world, whom God chose to lead an entire nation to freedom. He was not the strongest. He was not the most eloquent. He was the one who made himself available even with trembling hands. Does that not remind you of your own story? How many times have you thought you lost everything? How many times did you think God had forgotten you? And yet here you are. Maybe you lost someone you believed would be with you forever. Maybe you saw your dream fall apart right in front of you and had to hold back tears while pretending to be okay. Or maybe you felt invisible, like no one saw your worth anymore. But what the world calls the end, God calls a new beginning. His word says, "Behold, I make all things new." But for something to become new, something old has to die. Sometimes losing a job reveals your true calling. Sometimes someone leaving brings you back to the Father. Sometimes pain is the push we need to move forward. It is not fair, it is not easy, but it is real. And when you realize God's plans are bigger than yours, something inside of you shifts. You stop asking why, and you start asking what for. Imagine if David had accepted the label of being just the youngest. Even his own father overlooked him when the prophet came, but God saw him, not through the eyes of appearance, but through the eyes of the heart. And God sees you too. He is not looking at your flaws, your past, or your weaknesses. He sees your heart. He sees your surrender. He sees how hard you try, even when nobody claps for you. How many nights have you gone to bed feeling like a failure? And how many mornings have you woken up feeling like the weight of the world is on your shoulders, but you kept going? And that makes you strong. That makes you valuable. Do you know why? Because God does not call the perfect. He calls the willing. He does not use those who have everything together. He uses those who surrender everything. He turns the unlikely into vessels of power, the rejected into leaders, the broken into healers, and He can do the same with your life. Today, she is one of the most influential women in the world. Do you know why? Because she understood that hitting rock bottom can be the best place to hear God's voice more clearly than ever before. And maybe that's exactly where you are right now, in a moment where everything feels dark, stuck, and hopeless. But hear me out. Your pain is not wasted, and your waiting is not in vain. What you're going through now is part of something much greater that will eventually make sense. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but one day you'll look back and understand. Every tear was a seed, every no was protection, every silence was an answer. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is to keep walking even when everything in you wants to quit. It's saying, "I still believe." When you can't see, it's trusting God is leading even when He feels far. And when you do that, when you keep believing despite the pain, you become unshakable. Not because you're fearless, but because you've learned to walk even with fear. Do you think Paul felt no pain in prison? Do you think Mary didn't cry watching her son on the cross? Do you think Joseph never questioned why his own brothers betrayed him? But all of them came to understand something. God never wastes pain. He turns every wound into purpose. Every defeat becomes a testimony. Every tear brings renewal. So please don't give up. There are still pages left to be written in your story and promises waiting to be fulfilled. There are places only you can reach. You are not a mistake. You are not forgotten. You are part of an eternal plan, and God is still in control. Some battles come to break us. Others come to reveal who we are, and it's in the fiercest battles and the deepest deserts that our truest strength begins to rise. Not the strength others can see, but the one born when you've cried in silence and still choose to move forward when there's no clear way out, when you keep going, even bleeding on the inside. Romans chapter 5 verse 3 says, "Suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope." Maybe you're in that stage of suffering right now, facing loss, rejection, consequences of poor choices, or situations you never asked for, and yet you're still here. Listening, breathing. Trying that alone speaks volumes about your strength. How many times have you swallowed tears so others wouldn't worry? How many nights did you hope sleep would take the pain away? And still, you got up the next day like nothing was wrong. Have you realized how many battles you've fought silently while the world assumes you're fine? That's where your strength truly lies, not in the perfect moments, but in the chaos where you keep standing. Wounded, yes, but still standing, and it's in that kind of war that God reveals your true identity, not as someone defeated, but as someone forged in fire, someone He is preparing to inspire others. Someone who doesn't just go through pain, but learns from it. That's why God doesn't always remove the storm. Instead, He teaches you how to walk through it with faith and resilience. Think about how many times you wanted to give up and yet you didn't. That is more than strength. That is purpose. That is God's hand holding you when you thought you had no strength left. You may not see it now, but the version of you being shaped in this process will be stronger, more compassionate, and filled with greater faith than you've ever known before. You'll look back one day and say, "It was painful, it was hard, but it was worth it, because through it all I discovered who I am in God." Nick Vujicic is living proof of that. He was born without arms and without legs. He faced bullying, deep emotional crises, and even considered ending his life. But something inside him cried out louder, "You're not done yet." Today, he travels the world bringing messages of hope to millions, not because everything worked out perfectly, but because he refused to let pain define who he would become. And the same can happen to you. Maybe you feel like you're at your breaking point, but that very point is where the power of God begins. Because when you say, "I can't anymore," He answers, "Now it's my turn." Everything changes when you realize you don't have to be strong all the time, or have all the answers, or prove anything to anyone. All you need to do is trust and keep going, one step at a time, one day at a time, because faith isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward even when afraid, rising up even without strength, believing even when there's no evidence. And it's in that kind of faith that miracles are born. Think about Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, sold as a slave, falsely imprisoned. Everything seemed to be falling apart. But every stage shaped his character, and when the time was right, God placed him in the highest position. If he had given up halfway, he never would have become governor of Egypt. Maybe the place of pain you're in right now is the very path that will lead you to your purpose. If I can challenge you with one thing, let it be this. For 30 days, every time you feel like quitting, declare, "I am being strengthened." It may seem simple, but words carry power. The Bible says life and death are in the power of the tongue. And when you begin to speak life over your story, something starts to shift within you. You might not notice it right away, but little by little, strength returns, faith grows, and what used to paralyze you no longer holds the same power over you. You are not defined by your pain, not by your past, not by your failures. You are defined by what God is building inside of you now, and that is not built in ease. It's built through endurance, through the days when you choose to trust even when you don't understand. When you understand that, you stop seeing the battle as punishment and start seeing it as preparation. God isn't just rescuing you from something, He's preparing you for something far greater than you can imagine. Believe it. This pain has an expiration date, but the strength it leaves in you, that will last forever. Maybe you still don't understand why you're going through all this. Maybe you look around and wonder why so much suffering, why so many battles, why your life feels like a constant storm. But I want you to hear this with your heart. Nothing you've gone through or are going through will be wasted. God does not discard a single tear, not a single wound, not one disappointment. What you call a scar, He calls a testimony. What you call your past, He calls preparation. Because even your pain has a purpose, and often that purpose isn't just to transform you, it's to transform those around you. Some people will only be reached through your story, people who won't listen to a sermon, but they'll listen to your testimony. People who've lived through similar pain, but never had the courage to speak up. People who need to see someone else win, just so they can believe they can win too. And maybe, without even realizing it, you are being raised up as the answer to someone else's cry. Remember Joseph. He wasn't just healed from betrayal and injustice, he was positioned. God used everything that looked like a detour to place him exactly where he could save lives. He said, "You intended to harm me, but God turned it around for good, so that today many lives would be saved through what happened." This was never just about you. It never has been. Sometimes we pray for God to take the pain away, but He wants to use that pain to do something far greater. Something that blesses others, something that heals hearts that no longer believe, something that gives hope to those who are on the edge of giving up completely. Maybe what you feel right now is not just sorrow, but the weight of a calling. And yes, callings often hurt. They require surrender and faith when all of you wants to quit. But that surrender turns your life into a bridge between despair and hope, between wounds and healing, between giving up and beginning again. Have you noticed how people open up when you're honest about your struggles? When someone says, "I thought I was the only one who felt like that." The truth is, everyone is battling something, but only a few have the courage to admit it, and when you do, you become powerful in God's hands. It's not your success that connects people. It's your honesty. It's your process. It's your broken heart slowly being restored by His gentle hands. Maybe you're waiting to feel better before you start speaking, before you help others. But sometimes God will use you right in the middle of the pain. Even while you're still bleeding, He'll give you words that bring life. Even while crying, He'll use you to lift someone else up and remind them they're not alone. Healing often begins the moment you decide to be the answer, even when your own prayers remain unanswered. And no, that's not easy. It takes courage and real faith. You have to let go of shame, pride, and the fear of being misunderstood. But when you surrender your pain to God and let Him turn it into purpose, everything changes. Those who once looked at you with pity will begin to admire you. They'll be inspired. They'll start to believe because you chose not to quit. Do you know the story of Christian singer Lauren Daigle? She was rejected many times by record labels. They said her voice wasn't marketable, that she was too different. She faced discouragement, doubt, and moments where she wanted to give up. But she didn't. And when she finally released You Say, thousands around the world were deeply moved. Not because the song was perfect, but because it was honest. Because it came from a soul that knew rejection, that had suffered and still chose to sing. Maybe you don't sing, maybe you don't write, but your life is still an open letter, and people are watching how you respond, how you continue, how you still believe. Lives are being touched by you without you even realizing it. And all of heaven moves when you choose not to give up, even when your heart is exhausted. So take a deep breath and understand this. Your fight is not in vain. Every time you rise, despite being tired, every time you choose trust, you're leaving eternal marks. Marks that maybe only heaven will count, but they are building something much greater than you can imagine. You may feel useless, invisible, or discarded right now, but God sees you as a precious vessel, someone He wants to use, someone who can change the atmosphere, who can lift others, who can echo a hope this world has forgotten. And if you're hearing this, it's because this message is also for you. Because your life still carries purpose. Your testimony will still heal. Your journey was never wasted. There are still many lives to be reached through your story. You weren't broken to be abandoned. You were broken to be rebuilt and used. And God is still moving. You will see it happen. But right now, I want you to do something. Just take a deep breath. Close your eyes. Forget about the world outside, the pressure, the debts, the fear, the shame, the comparisons, the wounds, and listen to this truth with your heart. You're still here, and that alone is already a miracle. You've endured storms no one else saw, survived nights that felt never-ending, carried silent pain you couldn't even name, and stayed strong when everything inside you wanted to stop. Yes, maybe you fell, maybe you cried, maybe you felt forgotten, rejected, lost, but you're still standing, maybe trembling, maybe quiet, but still here. And that means more than you realize. In God's eyes, every tear you've cried holds the weight of gold. Every shaky step you've taken is honored. Every attempt, even the ones that failed, is celebrated in heaven. You don't have to be okay to be loved. You don't have to be perfect to be accepted. All you need to do is keep going. One day at a time, one breath at a time. Even a whispered prayer through tears is enough to move the heart of God. Some people may not understand what you're carrying, but God does. He was right there the night you said, "I can't take this anymore." He heard you. He saw you, and more than that, he stayed. He didn't walk away. He held you together when you thought you were alone. And that's why you've made it this far. Now, imagine what's still ahead. Imagine the day when you'll look back and understand the reason for every pain, every delay, every closed door, every silent season. Imagine the moment it all makes sense and you can finally say, "I'm so glad I didn't give up." And you'll realize that your life became the answer for someone else, that your struggle helped someone heal, that your story lifted someone up, that your new beginning inspired a whole generation. You are not small, you are not weak, and it is not too late for you. God is still writing your story. He is still restoring. He is still rebuilding. He is still bringing dead things back to life. And now, maybe with tears in your eyes and a heavy heart, I just ask you this: do not give up, even if no one understands, even if no one stands with you, even if everything feels dark. Keep going, because heaven still has promises left to fulfill in your life. There are still beautiful chapters waiting to be written. There is still glory yet to be revealed. You are not an accident. You are a purpose. You are not a mistake. You are part of a divine plan. You are not alone. You are deeply loved. And God still has something extraordinary to do through your life. Please don't leave before you see it. You will overcome. You will smile again. And the world will one day hear the story of someone who chose to keep going.